This is GARIS Masculist-MGTOW flyers, that is 2 3-page essays on the themes of masculism and MGTOW, written and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. This is flyer number 196, entitled Masculist-MGTOW Glossary, Part 2. Description. This flyer is part 2 of a 2-part glossary of Masculist-MGTOW terms. Anyone who wishes to have a quick overview of the ideas of the Masculists and the MGTOWs can study the definitions of the terms in this 2-part glossary. Part 2 consists of terms starting with letter M to Z. Now the flyer itself. Just a minute, I'll make it a bit bigger so I can read it. Masculist-MGTOW Glossary, Part 2 of 2, M to Z. Masculism is an ism, that is an ideology, with lots of new ideas that need new labels. As the number of ideas increases, and hence new labels, the need grows for creation of a Masculist glossary, which is what this flyer is. It consists of a list of Masculist and MGTOW labels and their succinct definitions. The best ideologists, for example Karl Marx, Mao Zedong, etc., knew the power of labels, of concept names that force people to say, "What's that?" when they hear a new term for the first time. Labels have great influence and can be used as intellectual tools to motivate people to change their behaviors and attitudes. Men can use these masculist terms to hit back at fluffy feminists and give them a taste of their own medicine, and can be used as intellectual tools to mend fair society. Here is the list in alphabetical order. Terms used in a definition that have their own definition in this glossary are in capitals. Not that that's relevant to a verbal account. Now, moving on from the masculist definition from Part 1. So the first entry, Part 2, is Masculist groups. Politically minded Masculists aim to have a Masculist group in every high school, every college, every university, to push women to fip up or rot on the shelf, being ignored by men for continuing to be fluffy parasites. Men fair, fair to men, both as an adjective and a verb. To men fair the gender laws is to make them fair to men. For example, men fairing the divorce laws, bringing in the para, etc. Men's lib, or men's liberation. Masculism is men's lib, freeing men from being man-slaves to women, creating laws that are beneficial to men, for example the para, and many other laws that would improve men's rights and quality of life. MGTOW, an acronym for Men Going Their Own Way, that is a branch of the men's lib movement, who refuse to marry, refuse to have kids, spend their money on themselves, and devote their lives to pursuing their own dreams and loves. The rise of the MGTOW movement is due largely as a reaction to the toxicity of the divorce courts. MGTOWs are mainly first harver men, who have rebelled against the traditional manslave role of the man, preferring to do what they want to do with their lives and not work for a woman so she can have kids in a house that he pays for. MGTOW apoliticality. Most MGTOWs are politically passive. They quietly walk away from marriage and paternity, arguing that the gender politicians are so corrupted by the feminazis that fighting them is a waste of effort, so aim to destroy the current gynocentric system by simply withdrawing support for it. Misandrist. A misandrist is a man-hater. Feminazi bitches are misandrists. The divorce courts are misandrist. The female-dominated media and primary schools are misandrist, constantly dumping on men, something that the Masculists and MGTOWs are utterly sick of and are lashing back at. Misandry, that's man-hating, dumping on men. MRM. MRM is an acronym for Men's Rights Movement, similar to what the Masculists want, but the Masculists are a lot more political and aggressive, forcing women to fip up or be punished by not having a man take any interest in her. Nawalt, that's Nawalt, an acronym for not all women are like that. That is, not all women are immoral, parasitic, man-slaving vermin. That is, some women are by nature emo-fips. MGTOWs think that all women are Nawalts. All women are Awalts. All women are like that. Nuclear weapon. This is the Masculist's strongest argument. That is, quote, until society and the gender politicians men fair the gender laws, the Masculists and MGTOWs will continue to wipe out whole populations by continuing to reject paternity. End quote. This argument will force the gender politicians to men fair the gender laws, or we all go extinct. Para. That's P-A-R-E-R. An acronym for paternity rejection right. That is, the right of a man to reject an unwanted pregnancy. Women have a mara, but men don't have a para. Millions of men have their lives ruined by criminal sexual partner women who lie to their man about taking the pill, become pregnant, and then slam a paternity suit on him to force him to pay for a pregnancy that he doesn't want. The lack of a para is the most blatant form of sexual discrimination against men that exists. It screams out for reform. A para would allow a man to fill in a government form rejecting unwanted paternity, so that if the woman proceeds with the pregnancy, then she alone will have full financial responsibility of the child. The fluffy feminist hypocrites will fight the legislation of the para with everything they have, because its passage would force women to fip up, a terrifying prospect for fluffies and fluffy feminists. Paternity strike. MGTOWs and Masculists are so disgusted by the misandry of the divorce courts that they have undertaken a policy of paternity strike, refusing to be fathers, not giving women their sperm. Political activism. Being politically active. The Masculists are much more politically active than the more apolitical MGTOWs, who tend to just quietly walk away from marriage and paternity. Masculists fight the fluffies, forcing them to fip up or rot on a shelf. Masculists accuse fluffy feminists of being hypocrites and approach the media to spread Masculist and MGTOW ideas. Masculists threaten the gender politicians with their nuclear weapon, threatening to wipe out whole populations unless the gender politicians men fair the gender laws, etc. Princesses. Princesses are young feminazi bitches, usually in their 20s, at the peak of their sexual attractiveness, who are showered with attention from sexually hungry young men. They have imbibed feminist rhetoric, believe they can do anything they want, and behave like princesses, that is, like female chauvinist, spoilt brats. Red pill. The red pill is one of the core ideas of the MGTOWs, based on an analogy from the movie The Matrix. Taking the red pill in the movie meant accepting the bitter reality that the intelligent machines had taken over humanity, using human bodies as batteries and feeding their brains with signals from the Matrix computers that made humans think that they were living in the 20th century. The red pill in the MGTOW world is the idea that, quote, women don't love men. Women love men's exploitability, end quote. When a man loses his exploitability, a woman will coldly, disloyally drop him in favour of a more exploitable male. Women evolved to be like this. It makes good Darwinian evolutionary sense. Red pill rage. The red pill rage is the anger men feel when they become convinced of the very negative truth of the idea of the red pill. It permanently sours the way they see women and puts up a real barrier against women. One of the most popular sayings of the MGTOWs is, quote, you can love women or you can understand them, in brackets, with the understanding that the or is an exclusive or. Second halver. A man in the second half of his life, that is, older than 40. Most MGTOWs are first halvers, so do not have sufficient life experience to be able to empathise with the gender issues of second halver men. Sexbot, a sex robot programmed to be very attractive to men, with luscious curvy bodies, film star faces, creamy, grippy vaginas that women will not be able to compete with. Once the sexbots and artworms come, probably in less than a decade, feminism will disappear overnight as women go into deep existential crisis as men neglect them. Women will be forced to be especially nice to men in order to be competitive with the sexbots and the artworms. Sex war. Once women become very familiar with the ideas of the Masculists and the MGTOWs, a fierce debate will rage between the sexes, expressing, on the one hand, the bitterness that women will feel at having to raise children on their own as a result of MGTOW and Masculist policies, and on the other hand, the hatred of the Masculists and MGTOWs against the feminazi bitches for having made the divorce courts so toxic, for opposing the legislation of the para, etc. STEM, an acronym for Science, Tech, Engineering and Math. These subject areas, along with the professions, medicine, dentistry, architecture, law, etc., are considered as career competent by Masculists, and are the type of subjects that Masculists insist that women study if they want to even tway-twef with a man. Toxicity of the divorce courts. The fluffy feminist hypocrites have taken over the divorce courts and made them toxic for men. One married father in 4 will be financially massacred in these courts. That is about 1 million American men a year. They will lose their kids with 90% probability. They will lose their house to their fluffy ex-wife so she can raise her kids in it. He will be forced to pay child payments to kids he will barely see, and often will pay alimony to his fluffy ex-wife so that she remains a parasite of him after the divorce, the way she was before the divorce. Divorce, and hence marriage, has become such a rotten deal for men that 2/3 of young men in the major countries now refuse to marry, refuse to have kids, and spend their money on themselves. Young men are rebelling against the traditional man-slave role of the man, choosing a MGTOW lifestyle instead. Toxicity of marriage. The toxicity of marriage is the toxicity of the divorce courts, which have been taken over by the fluffy feminist hypocrites. Tway-tweffing, short for 2A2F-ing, that is, 2 apartments, 2 FIPs, where both the man and the woman in a relationship are FIPs, and both have their own apartment. When the relationship fails, the 2 of them just walk back to their own apartments, cost-free for the man. The advantage of tway-tweffing for a man is that he gets the regular sex he needs from a woman, without paying the traditional price of being a manslave to a fluffy parasite. Tway-tweffing forces the woman to be permanently nice to the man, otherwise he can walk away so easily, so she can't nag him, withhold sex, or try to mold him the way she wants. If she does, he walks away. Wage slave, a person who does what he is told to do by his employer. He is not free to do what he wants or what he loves, if he were an archer. Well, that's the end of part 2, so I hope you enjoyed it, I hope you found it instructive, and ciao.